When we consider and assess developing countries in the world, they often tend to share very similar characteristics. And knowledge of what these characteristics are can then aid us, or aid government politicians and aid NGOs and people involved in development outcomes to actually achieve development in such countries, overcoming these characteristics or knowing what these characteristics are. So it's important that we can also do that, and we also know what the common characteristics of developing countries are. These are the big ones, okay, so the main 8, and we're going to come to this main conclusion at the bottom at the end of the video. So, one dominant feature of developing countries is that there tends to be very low standards of living. That manifests in low incomes, it manifests in poor job creation, and it manifests in quite high levels of poverty. So low standards of living. There tend to be low levels of productivity, a lack of investment is a prominent feature in such economies, and also a lack of capital. Lack of availability of capital, we could argue as well, which means productivity levels are very, very low. And coupled with low levels of savings, people tend to be trapped in very kind of poorly paid jobs that don't really produce very much anyway, and therefore the chance of earning higher incomes and getting out of a poverty trap are very, very low. So low levels of savings because there is a lack of financial institutions available in the economy, there's a lack of education about where to save the money and why saving is important, and very simply incomes are low. So to actually save money is difficult in the first place, to have anything to save. So these two things very much go together, and a lack of savings also fuels a lack of productivity, a lack of investment, a lack of capital. High population growth, again, is a dominant feature of these countries. Often subsistence is still what is sought after among poor families in developing countries. They tend to give birth a lot because the more children they have, the more chance of using those children very simply in the future as workers on farms, in agricultural sectors, for these children to then work and then to generate an income to support the family. That's still very much a dominant feature of how families in developing countries tend to think still. So high population growth to fuel that motive. Agricultural dependence. I say primary sector dominance, yes, but especially agriculture at the heart of these economies. A lot of these developing countries tend to be blessed with natural resources, and these countries plough a lot of the factors of production in the agricultural sector for that reason. They promote growth from this sector. But again, because of low capital, low investment, agriculture on its own doesn't necessarily lead to higher incomes and high growth, high development. But anyway, that is a common feature. Dualistic structures, heavily agricultural based production. Number 6, incomplete markets. So again, lack of financial institutions doesn't help with this. A lack of a hard currency. A lot of these currencies tend to be soft, and they tend not to be wanted by other economies, which holds back the development of markets in such developing countries. So incomplete markets, lack of provision of property rights as well, doesn't help that. So that's a major problem. High unemployment and high underemployment as well. So high unemployment, we've said, comes back to the fact that production in the economy is dominated from the agricultural sector, where there is low productivity. Low savings means investment is very low, access to capital is low, and all this does is hinder potential employment prospects. The fact that there isn't another sector to go to, the fact that education is very low in the economy as well, means that for people to get jobs is very difficult. To find jobs is difficult. And even those that do find jobs often tend to be underemployed. It's hard for them to find a full-time job. At the same time, there are lots of people in these economies that maybe have just given up looking for jobs. So the unemployment rate may not actually be a true reflection of how many people don't have a job. These people that are, you could say, hidden unemployed, or have just been so demoralized they've left the workforce, means that the unemployment rate may actually be way higher than what it actually tells us, because these people are not included in our measure of unemployment. And finally, low economic power in the international stage. These countries, compared to advanced economies, don't have much of a say when it comes to international agreements, when it comes to international cooperation. As a result, it means that they can't manipulate situations in the international and the globalized world to suit them. They can't find a way to trade more. They can't find a way to reduce tariffs placed on their goods. They can't talk about trade relations very easily. They can't talk about accessing finance very easily because they don't have the power on the international stage to get their voice across. So all these are common characteristics, and what we can actually say is that a lot of these characteristics can be barriers to growth and development in these countries. So again, for us to have an understanding of this is crucial, because when we talk about barriers to development, we will come to a lot of these things. And again, when it comes to promoting development, we need to know what the characteristics are of developing countries so that we can overcome some of these barriers. But a key thing to finish on is that all developing countries will not have all of these characteristics. Not all developing countries are the same. They all have their diverse characteristics too, which is very important for us to consider. Different resource endowments, different specialties in the labour force, different political structures, different historical backgrounds, etc., etc., etc. We need to consider those too and realise that each country on its own is very unique. We can't just look at pursuing development generically. We have to look at each country specifically and target modes of promoting development that are, again, specific and useful for that one individual country based on that individual country's characteristics. So bear that in mind as we move forward. But thanks very much for watching. This is a very important video. Keep it close and keep it fixed in your head. Thanks very much. See you next time.